because when I looked at what a lot of other denominations talk about when they talk about the tree of life, it's always about eternal life. But they kind of miss the part, and they figure, well, that's the healing, is that now we have eternal life. But there's something different here, right? We already know that. There's been a change in the tree of life since the original tree of life. And so I like how it talks about separation and how we've been separated, and the healing is bringing us back together again. But I think we can take this even a step further, because today we live in a world of broken relationships. Because we chose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we do experience separation. We not only experience separation from God, but we experience separation from each other. We are full of broken relationships. You know, one of the things that Ellen White talks about, she says 2 things came out of the Garden of Eden when we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. She said one was the Sabbath and the other was marriage. And it's so interesting how Satan attacks both those things with so much vigor because of the meaning that they hold. Because man and woman were created to exemplify the image of God. And so if he can break that relationship, he's breaking the image of how we conceptualize God. So these days we have so many broken relationships. This year the divorce rate is actually predicted to be a little bit lower than usual, 45%, still a lot though for first marriages. And actually one of the reasons it's lower is because fewer people are getting married. There's actually an increase in people not getting married. 60%, there's a 60% divorce rate for second marriages and a 73% divorce rate for third marriages plus. 26.4% of children live in single-parent homes. 40% of families in the U.S. are blended. 5% of children don't live with either parent, and 7% live with cohabiting parents. So we see that there are broken relationships all around us. And that's just with relationships of marriage. That's not even talking about friendships, co-workers, the people that we meet and are around every day. That's not even talking about sibling relationships. So there's, unfortunately, so much that's broken, that has been separated because of our choice. So how then do we mend broken relationships? So this is where I like to tie in a little bit more of a mental health piece. One of my favorite quotes is from a psychologist named Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist during World War II. He was in the concentration camps. He actually wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And the first half of the book is about his experience being in a concentration camp. And I guess you can take the psychologist out of his home, but you can't take the psychology out of the psychologist, because while he was in the concentration camps, he started looking at, for those who were not murdered, he started looking at what made the difference between those who survived and those who didn't. And what he found is that it all boiled down to their attitude. It didn't have anything to do with, it had little to do with health, how big or how small they were before they entered the concentration camp, but everything to do with what their attitude was. And so he writes this. He says, everything can be taken from a man. And he knew what it meant to have everything taken away. He became little more than a number.